Hey gang, David Henry from Inspired Tennis. Hope you're doing well. Hey, switching it up a little bit tonight, doing one in front of the whiteboard as opposed to behind the stringing machine. This one tonight is for the beginning stringers, okay? What I'm going to talk about are the tools that I use when stringing. I get questions a lot about, David, should I use this tool? Which tool should I use? How should I use a certain tool? So that's kind of what I'm hoping to attempt to answer tonight in this video. And what I'm talking about is just purely stringing. I'm not talking about any tools used for grip work or grommet work or any other type of customization. Just the tools that I use when I'm stringing. And you may be surprised to find out how few of number of tools that I use when I'm stringing, okay? I'm a really kind of a keep it simple kind of guy, and like to have as few tools as possible and keep things very simple, okay? Life can get really busy and really hectic and overwhelming at times, so in all aspects of my life, including stringing, I like to keep things simple, so that's why I'm titling this Keeping It Simple, Tools for Stringing, okay? So the first one that I want to talk about are my snips, okay, my cutters. Come up here and you can maybe see those a little bit better. But just your basic string cutters. And what I use this for, obviously, I use it for cutting out strings. Okay, so if a client brings me a racket that still has the strings in it, I would obviously have to cut out the strings before I can restring it. So I cut it out, and I've done another video on this. This is an older video that I did. It's a little shaky back in my amateur days, but I use a pattern where I go clockwise, where I do cross, main, cross, main, cross, and kind of work my way out. So you can check out that video about cutting out the strings, but that is one use for this tool. Cutting string. So if I'm working from a reel of string and I need to cut off a certain length of string in order to string a racket, I'll obviously use the snips for that. If I'm working doing a two-piece string job and I need to take a set of string and cut it into two pieces, obviously any type of cutting, I'm using this. Cutting the tips, okay? So I've done another video about this that you can check out as well, about getting string through blocked or shared holes. And in that video I talk about cutting the tips of the string like at an angle, at a sharp point, so it's a real fine point to push through those blocked or shared holes. And so I certainly use these snips for that. And then for cutting the tails, okay? So when I'm tying a knot and I'm done, and I've got this long tail, I'm ready to clip that tail and cut it off, so I've got a nice little tail there right attached to the knot. I use these as well, and I did a video about that, about cutting the tail, so you can check that out too, okay? The next tool number 2 is needle nose pliers, okay? So here they are, bent nose pliers. You can see use these for grabbing string and pulling string. So, if I'm working and maybe there's a tighter situation where the one of my mounting arms or something is kind of in the way of where a string's coming out of a hole and I can't quite get up there with my fingers, I can use these bent nose pliers and kind of grab the string and pull it on through so I get a bigger piece that I can then work with, okay? I use it for flattening string. So again, back to the issue of getting string through a blocked or shared hole. Sometimes cutting it at a real sharp angle and a fine tip is not enough. Sometimes it needs to be flattened out before you cut it at the angle. And so at the bottom of these, you can kind of put the string in this flat part and then grip down hard on it, and it'll flatten off a little section of string, and then you can cut it off at the angle. Okay, so I use it for flattening string. And then for pushing string through blocked or shared holes. So once I cut my point, again, I did another video on this that you can check out in more detail, but I'm pushing the string through and I'm kind of inching it along with my pliers. So I'll grab it, push, grab it, push, grab it, push, and work it through that blocked or shared hole, okay? Tool number 3, my starting clamp, okay? My beloved starting clamp. I've done another video that you can check out. So many number of uses for a starting clamp. I forget what the number is, but I talked about a bunch of different uses for a starting clamp. But the main ones that I'm going to cover here, when and why I use my starting clamp, is if I'm doing a two-piece pattern. Okay, if I'm doing a two-piece pattern, I have a couple options. When I'm starting my crosses, I can do a starting knot and in that case, I don't need this. Or I can use my starting clamp and tie a finishing knot, okay? And that's the method that I prefer. So what I'll do is my other fixed clamps will be in use. I'll need this third clamp, so I will use this, my starting clamp, to help me along, and then tie a finishing knot. Normally I do a Parnell knot, but that's neither here nor there for this video. But that is an important use for my starting clamp, is when I'm doing a two-piece pattern. The around the world pattern. So if I'm doing an around the world pattern, same type of thing. Is there'll be a situation where both of my fixed clamps are in use, yet I'll need a third clamp. So I have to get the starting clamp out and use that in order to do an around the world pattern. When I'm tightening knots, okay, when I'm tightening knots, I pull up as much as I can just with my hand, just to kind of initially cinch it up. But then once I need to really cinch it up and tie a nice cinched up knot, I will put the string in the starting clamp and then pull. I of course use that rocking motion. I pull, rock, and snug it up as good as I possibly can. You know, some people I know use maybe like the bent nose pliers or something like that to pull the knots, and you know, that's a bad idea. These things don't grip as tightly as my starting clamp, and you know, there have been situations where I did pull with this, and so you're pulling right up towards your face, and you know, if this thing slips, you could whap yourself in the forehead or nose or chip a tooth or something like that. So that's why I don't use that. The starting clamp grips the string. My starting clamp, it's an Alpha starting clamp that I have. I absolutely love this thing. It grips like a champ. And so I have no worries when I'm pulling knots with this, no worries that it's ever going to slip and hit myself in the face. So that's another use for the starting clamp, is tightening knots. Also, use the starting clamp for the butt saver method, alright? Butt saver method is basically, and again, I've done another video on that you can check out in more detail, but just real briefly, what that is when maybe you're stringing your crosses and you're down to the last cross and you don't have enough string to reach from the racket to the tension head on the stringing machine, so you're stuck. You need to bridge that gap, and this is where it comes into play, the butt saver method, because it saves your butt. Is that it allows you to take a scrap piece of string and hook it in here, and then also grab the string that you're using for your last cross, and basically that kind of bridges the gap between your racket and the tension head and allows you to finish the job. So that's another use for the starting clamp. And then the last tool I have up there, I debated whether to even list this as a tool, but then I finally decided to. It's a tape measure. I always have my tape measure in my tray on my stringing machine, and you know, I've done another video about this, about measuring string just by using the wingspan method, you know, and I know how to do that. So I know, just by doing the wingspan method, I know what is 3 feet of string, I know what is 2 feet, I know what is 1 foot. So I know how to do that quickly and easily, and so that's how I measure string most of the time. But there are some instances where I just want to make sure and double check or be really precise, so I do always have my tape measure on hand in case I need that. So I chose to list that here as tool number 4, and really that's it. You know, these 3 tools, and maybe 4 if you count the tape measure, you know, that's all I use. I've never had any problems or rackets that I couldn't string because I didn't have the right tool. So, you know, if you're looking to get started in stringing, or if you're a new stringer, you know, you can probably get away with just these basic 3 or 4 tools and be well on your way. Now, there are other tools that you certainly can use, and many top stringers use these tools as well. I mean, a lot of stringers use an awl. I don't when stringing. I've never had the need for it. Pathfinder awl, which is a special type of awl to get through shared or blocked holes. You know, again, great tool. I just haven't had the need for it. I've been able to get through shared and blocked holes using the other method that I use, where I cut the tip and kind of inch it through. So no worries there. And then There's also a setting off awl that some stringers use to straighten the strings. It's a real blunt awl. I kind of straighten the crosses as I go and then can just barely adjust them with my fingers if need be at the end of a string job, so I don't use that. But again, there are plenty of different tools out there that you could use, and there's nothing wrong with using them. I just choose to keep it simple and use these 3 and the tape measure, if you count that, 4 tools. So that's all I have for tonight, gang. I hope that helps. Thanks for checking in.